What's up, fellas? Welcome to Sunday Sermons here at Mike, your mentor. Hope you guys had a good day. My day was fabulous. A little church, a little basketball at the gym, a little work afterwards, and now we're doing this. So if you're new to my channel, basically what I'm doing is I am sharing all the life lessons and things along my way that have kind of made me who I am today. Today we'll get into some of the more specifics of what's kind of happened in my past, but being 38 years old, I've asked myself numerous times, like, how can someone like me be born into the situation that I was born into, grow up in a fatherless home, and become the person that I am today? Not saying that I'm all that or I got everything together, but I've been through a lot. And how do you persevere? How do you overcome those types of obstacles and have your own family and I guess hold down a job and be a good dad and try to be the best husband that you can be? The main question that I've asked myself, and there's a couple of different reasons. One is obviously the grace of God. But two is I had a lot of mentors in my life, physical mentors, and books. I mean, I was just hungry. I was hungry to learn and to better myself, to be honest with you, because I didn't want to be like my dad growing up. I wanted to have my own family and not have them go through what I went through as a kid. So that's why I created this channel. So I'm just sharing all the life lessons and things that I've learned over these 38 years with anyone that wants to listen. It's primarily aimed at men because men have a higher calling on their lives, in their homes, in their communities, at their jobs, and a lot of men don't step into that for a lot of different reasons. So the goal of this is just to help you be a better man for 2019, so you can, I guess, up your game, change your life, and have a greater impact on your family and your kids, your community, and the people that you're around. So the purpose of Sermon Sunday is I'm going to be sharing the exact things, the craziness, I guess you could say, the events that happened in my life and that made me the way that I am. So this is a little bit new for me as far as using the technology to do this, so bear with me. I think I got this right. So we'll click over here, and then I'm gonna do this, hit that. Alright, sweet. Okay, so there's the first little page on this thing. So here we are, Sunday Sermon, week 1. I'm just calling this the overview. This cute little picture is from when we lived in Chicago, and I'm walking my daughter down the alley next to the building that we lived in. And it's kind of symbolic, right, of the older generation helping the younger generation get somewhere. And I wouldn't be where I'm at today if it weren't for older guys taking the time to speak into my life, and I wanna pay that back. So that's what I'm doing. So this is going to be the overview of my life. So we'll click over the next thing here. So I got this fancy little title at the top, Who is Mike King? And then from growing up poor in the ghetto to husband, father, friend, and mentor. And this is kind of what the weeks are going to look like. So the first week, which will start next week, or I guess the second week that would be, I titled that Father Wounds Part 1. So that'll be like a basic overview of what my family life looked like at a young age. That's a picture right there in the upper left-hand corner of me and my sister, and one of the few I got of my dad, celebrating, I think, was a birthday. So we're going to start there. And then the next week, I'm going to talk about my relationship, being the oldest of 3. My sister was the middle child, and my brother was the youngest. And then the week after that, which would be, I guess, week 4, I titled that Beware of Dog. I have a fascination, or as a kid I had a fascination with dogs, and they seem to get me in trouble. So I'll tell 2 stories in particular, having to deal with dogs. I think you'll find one of them amusing, and one of them definitely interesting. So week 5, raised by a single mom. I'll just be talking about, what it was like having my mom raise me, working 2, 3 jobs sometimes to take care of 3 kids on her own, doing the best that she can, and I guess kind of the feelings that I had during that time. I blame my mom for a lot of stuff that happened because I wasn't mature enough to understand and see the whole picture. And now that I'm older and I look back on it, my mom did the best that she could with what she had to work with, and I don't think if I was in her position I could have done any better. So that's kind of what we'll talk about there. The next week, I titled that Feeling Awkward. That's not a very good picture, but that's probably one of the worst haircuts that I've ever had. And that year was, that period of my life was extremely awkward and embarrassing. I went through a lot of things that we'll talk about, and a lot of the emotions and a lot of the depression, I guess, I went through that I never talked about before and a lot of people didn't know about. The next picture there in the right, labeled that Hello Ladies, because that was kind of me growing into my body and who I was and my identity, I guess, at that time of my life, and discovering girls and just what it's like to, I guess, maybe experience a little bit of popularity. I wouldn't consider myself super popular in high school. I got along with everybody, but I had my fair share of friends and girlfriends as well. Then the next photo is from my high school graduation, and that's titled Father Wounds Part 2. And this is kind of the beginning of a 6-year period of my dad coming back into our lives and then disappearing and then reappearing again at various stages. So we'll discuss that, the story surrounding that week, and then after that, the next week is ATK 10901, and we'll discuss my brother and his death and what he decided to do and what that looked like, and the impact that had on me and my family, and the lessons we can learn from that. And then the next slide right there to the right is titled Fighting to Live, and that's what my life was like after my brother died, and kind of the theme basketball played in my life, because throughout my life it gave me purpose and allowed me to hold on and to something to look forward to and to keep going. And I really needed it at this time in my life because I didn't know what to do, man. I was lost. I was spinning. And that structure that came with basketball really helped me find my way and find my bearings again. And it was an emotional roller coaster, and I'll share some of the stories, some of the insides from practice and some of the events that went on after a couple of games where I was cracking and I was starting to break. So yeah, the next picture you see there in the lower left-hand corner, that's from my college graduation. First person in my family to graduate from college, so I'm extremely proud of that. But that also opened up another door that I titled Father Wounds Part 3. When we'll talk about my dad coming into my life for the last time in my life, and kind of what that looked like and how that went down. And then the next picture you see there in the middle with me holding the microphone in a jersey, I call that Rumble in the Jungle. And that's what I did after college. I was fortunate enough to go on a missions basketball trip to the Philippines and saw a bunch of crazy stuff. So we'll talk about that. And then the picture in the bottom right is me and my wife from our wedding day, and I labeled that Contract or Covenant. And that week's going to be tough, to be honest with you. Probably the toughest maybe out of all of these, because that time in my life, I have the biggest regret, and there's a lot of emotion, but there's a lot of lessons to be learned from that week that I'm looking forward to share, and hopefully it'll help some people out that can relate to it. Then we're going to have in the upper left-hand corner, I don't know if you can see it on my screen, it's kind of covered, but it's called Breaking Generational Curses, and that is me from the wedding as well, sitting there with my stepson. By blood, he's my stepson, but I consider him my son, and that's the only thing that he'll ever be is my son. And he was 7 at that age. Yeah, and ironically, this will tie into some other things, but his name is Anthony, and he's a great kid, and at that age, he was an awesome little dude. Yeah, so we'll talk about that and how I was able to break the generational curse on my family and what that looks like today. That middle picture there I've titled Authentic Manhood, and that's a group snapshot of a bunch of guys that I became involved with when I lived in Chicago, and I really needed good, strong male role models around me in that time of my life. And every year we get together for a weekend and come together and hold each other accountable and talk about what's going on in our lives and how we can be better husbands and fathers and leaders in our community, and it's an awesome time. So we'll talk about that and what that looks like. And then the next picture is a picture of me and my daughter. She's got me in a chokehold, and I've titled that Somebody Help Me. And I'll just be talking about my daughter and my experiences being a dad and in raising a girl, especially in today's world, and some of the tips or maybe, I guess, pieces of advice for you other dads out there that have little girls and are trying to raise them correctly in today's crazy world. So then the next picture down to the left is called Rite of Passage, and then that's my son. He was 13 with one of his good friends, Ethan, who's the same age, and this is something we'll be talking about on the Friday series, Authentic Manhood. But when do you become a man in our society? Some people would say it's when you, I guess, when you sleep with a woman for the first time, or maybe it's when you drink a beer for the first time, or maybe it's when you turn 18. There's not a real concrete way for a man to know that he's a man. And I firmly believe that manhood can only be established from one man's life to another. So it has to come from another man bestowing that upon you. So that rite of passage is, we'll talk about a little ceremony that I did for my son. That was the beginning stages as he walks into manhood in his life and what that looks like, and maybe that's give you some advice and just flesh that out. So if you've got young kids, young sons in particularly, you can get an idea of, start thinking forward to what you want to do for your son and what you want him to know about manhood and what that looks like, and making an awesome memory for him to look back on in his life. The next picture is me and my grandpa, I think from the 4th of July, and I titled that A Real Man because my grandpa played a profound role in my life and taught me a lot of awesome life lessons and really helped. He was a cornerstone in shaping me and helping me become the person that I am. He was an extremely hard worker to the point where physically, if it meant he had to work harder physically than intellectually, I guess that's what he would do, because that's what he knew. He came out of the Great Depression, and he came from a family, I think, of 13. I think he had 8 brothers, if I'm remembering this correctly, and they were extremely poor. They lived outside a garbage dump, and he made something out of his life, and he bestowed those values in me. So that's what we'll talk about. And then obviously the one on the right is Next Chapter's Coming Soon. I've got some stuff on here that I got planned out for you guys to share with you that we'll get to when we get to that time. But yeah, that's kind of what it looks like for the time frame coming up, and what you can expect for the next weeks as I share my life with you. So I just want to encourage you, man. Come with an open mind. Come ready to let God minister to you and learn from my experiences and my life lessons. And I'm looking forward to this particular day of the week and the journey that will ensue. So have a good week. We'll see you guys tomorrow. And, go out there and may everything that you say and do honor those around you, honor your family and those you represent. And if you believe in God, honor God. All right. Talk to you guys tomorrow. Have a good night.